Beer Geeks, Happy New Year and welcome to Big in 2025.
So this is the episode, Johnny, where we try and predict the next 12 months in beer, the trends, what we're gonna be seeing in the future.
Yeah, because the world and indeed the beer industry famously predictable of late, and I think that shows in the fact that we started off with a pretty good hit rate with this series. This is now like the 6th or 7th year we've done this. I'd say this year we got the most things wrong.
Yeah,
which is
definitely
why we're opening with an 8% double IPA.
We're drowning our sorrows slightly.
Exactly that, yeah. So let's start with one that we maybe did get right, which is our prediction that Strata was going to become, if not the next Citra, a very important hop.
Yes.
And I think to some extent we did get that pretty right. And the reason we got it right is because it kind of already happened when I said it was going to. So it was already a thing. It was
That's
already
the great
everywhere.
thing about predicting stuff that's happened.
Yeah, it's easier.
It's happened.
Yeah.
It's easier.
You know, you're right. So Strata now, if you look at the hoppy fridge back there, I'd say about a third of the beers in that fridge currently have used Strata to some extent because it's this lovely passion fruity, sticky base layer. It's incredible for hazy IPAs. It's not bad if you want to have a really sticky West Coaster. It's actually got a nice smooth bitterness, so it can work in some crisper beers as well. So it's just a real utilitarian hop that's being used everywhere, but
to excess, certainly.
arguably it already was. Yeah, so this is an annual release now from Daya. Just smell it. Just
smells
passion fruit
amazing.
weed.
I mean, it offers so much, doesn't it, Strata, as a hop, the kind of flavour profiles it can bring to beer. Bonkers, really. So you can see why it's done so well.
Yeah. So one down, one correct. Strap yourself in. It's the only one I got right. So the next thing I predicted is pretty much the opposite of Strata, which is the rise of hoppy Pilsner, West Coast Pils, dry hop Pilsners, Italian Pilsners, anything that combined the hoppy love, the hoppy joy that we get from IPAs with a much more drinkable style. Did you see that this year?
So yeah, I did a bit. Like essentially what you're saying is like a crispy boy that's hoppy as well. Hoppy crispy.
Yes. It's for the IPA lovers whose palates and livers are probably getting tired.
Yeah.
And also people coming into the beer industry. It's quite a nice introduction to hop texture and flavour and bitterness. And I think it did happen this year, but we're going to talk about it in my predictions for 2025 because I think I called it a bit early.
Johnny Stradamus was a little bit too far into the future.
I'm like those people that go like, the world's going to end this day, and then when that passes, I'm like, no, I got it wrong. This is the next day.
I meant next year, guys. Yeah, next year.
So the next thing I predicted was the idea that macro craft breweries would really start to muscle in on craft beer, independent craft beer spaces. And I think while that's definitely true, that slightly portrays the wrong message because actually macro craft brewers have had a torrid time. We've seen, particularly in America, macro breweries, the owners of these companies, shedding brands, shedding breweries, closing production sites, and they're really struggling. But on the flip side, we've seen some of those brands do incredibly well and start to invade.
And there's also the sort of issue of like confusion, isn't there? Where, you know, like it becomes unclear if something is independent or if it's or if independent means craft.
Yeah.
Like all of these terms are kind of a little bit confusing, and we've seen a bit of a backlash this year from Sieber and their indie
beer label,
which I think is probably a good idea to sort of assure the consumer that what they're drinking is independently owned craft beer.
It's definitely a sign that sort of the lobbying companies and the consumer groups are taking note of this. We've seen Camera as well take an even more kind of fierce stance on independence as well. And, you know, I congratulate them on that. And Sieber's campaign around indie beer has been, you know, brilliant and educational. The only thing I would say is, as we always say on the channel, independence is a means to an end. The end is ethical, sustainable growth and business.
Tasty.
Yeah. And tasty beer. That's not always the case with independent breweries, as we've sadly come to realise. So there's definitely been a backlash against it because the water's never been muddier. But yeah, it's kind of it's been a bane and a bliss year, I think, for macro brewers, and the ones that have really worked. The ones that haven't, they've had to chuck in the bin, essentially.
Yeah.
So the next thing we predicted, somewhat controversially, I think, was the idea of a bit of a civil war within craft beer. As big beer sort of piles pressure on, I think breweries and brewers start to disagree about the best way to react, about way that craft beer should be going, about essentially the soul of craft beer, and whether it is these big, silly, adventurous, nostalgic, slightly childlike, heavily fruited sours and pastry stouts, and huge barrel-infused beers, or whether it's really, I guess, kind of sensible, refined, to some extent, traditional beers.
Traditional, yeah.
Yeah, and we put like a dry hop saison next to a triple fruited sour, and I think that's definitely happened. And I think that probably Sensible has won out a little bit last year, but it hasn't been. I haven't seen disagreements. I haven't seen people marketing themselves against each other as I thought might happen.
Yeah,
people have quietly got on with their own things.
I guess you're kind of, if you're a brewer, you're kind of staying in your own lane. You're focusing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Communicating your story.
Yeah. I guess I thought that people would be more combative, because craft beer used to be very combative. You look at Stone, Brewdog, Ballast Point, all these early brews were like
shouty,
big
tribalist.
beers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I think maybe that has disappeared from craft a bit, and it's less about banging a drum and more about having a conversation. It was a conversation. Definitely, there's been a trend towards Sensible, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been the big disagreement I feared might be on the horizon. Yeah. Well, those are the predictions we made last year. We did okay. We got one right, two kind of rightish, and one wrong. This year, of all years, it's been the most difficult to predict. I have sweated and fretted and tried to work out how on earth we predict where this market is going, with so many moving parts, particularly in the UK, new government, new systems, new alcohol duties, everything is in flux. So working out what's going to happen in the UK has been difficult, but globally, I think there are some patterns that we're going to pick up on now. So we've talked a couple of times about low alcohol beer on the channel and the rise of it, but I think that low alcohol is always, it's a bit like the year of the lager. People have said this is the year where it breaks through. And I'm going to say it this year, I think for the first time. I don't think I've said it before, but I have been, at beer festivals all of this year, because I do talks at lots of them. 2 days ago, I was hosting the British Guild of Beer Writers Awards. I would say a third of the beers on tap were low alcohol there. We've seen celebrities get involved in the low alcohol space. We've seen so many, really championed, loved breweries getting into it and seeing that it's going to be a thing. That I think finally this year, if it's not the year that low alc breaks, it's the year that low alc tries to break mainstream.
It's the year low alc went to Hollywood. Yeah, for sure. Tom Holland, all these other
characters. And it might end up just like serving beers to the stars in dive bars, but people know it's there.
I'm not against that.
So, I mean, we've picked a couple of breweries that I think people would be surprised to know have got into the low alcohol space.
Yeah.
Northern Monk that you're drinking have been in that space for a long, long time.
They have.
And actually, this is one of my favourite low alcohol beers.
And Faith is a brilliant beer.
Yeah.
This is Holy Faith.
Get the aroma on that.
Yeah, it smells like Faith, kind of. Pretty good.
Yeah, it's got a really big, beautiful hoppy aroma and a really good body. When I did my Dry January video a couple of years ago, this was kind of my favourite hoppy beer, and Rothaus was my favourite lager. But then also, with the likes of Mash Gang and stuff doing good stuff, we also have Onopoyo making Bianca, which is like their signature giant sour beer. This is a blueberry maple pancake lassi ghoster, 0.3%.
I mean, look at the colour on it.
Yeah.
Look away it's lacing up the glass, mate.
I mean, you think to some extent it would be really easy to make this because most of the ingredients aren't beer related.
They're like loads of fruit and stuff, right? But I guess they ferment if you leave them long enough.
Yeah. I mean, there's all these criticisms always in the comments like, it's just alcoholic fruit juice. Well, this, my friends, is non-alcoholic fruit juice, otherwise known as fruit juice. Yeah. But I mean, it's very delicious. You get loads of maple. It's probably a maple flavouring. Loads of maple, loads of blueberry. It'll be blueberry puree.
I mean, that
breakfast juice.
That slipped down, mate.
Yeah, apparently it did. See if this
Give us some of that guy. Yeah. Look at that. Oh, the maple. The maple.
So much maple.
Off the hook.
And
wow.
It's going to be really interesting to see, craft beer. I think there's a bit of a toxic thing in craft beer where low alcohol is ignored.
Yeah.
The idea of even like drinking in moderation is kind of ignored as well. It's an industry that really struggles with the amount of alcohol that they'll actually consume. So it's really interesting to see breweries go for it in this regard, because that's not going to be a cheap beer to make or buy.
Not a cheap beer to make or buy. But like, what an incredible low alcohol beer.
Yeah.
Because it's so much fun. Like, that does taste like a stack of pancakes.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does.
It's amazing.
And-
That's amazing.
You know, if you're going to be doing what we were talking on the podcast recently, zebraing,
Zebra.
low and no alcohol in between your alcoholic beers,
Yeah.
that's going to be a really easy option to decide to take rather than
man.
drinking a faux lager. This is, we're seeing experimentation, we're seeing real commitment, we're seeing breweries large and small producing them.
Solid classic beers as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we're going to see in the craft beer space, which is what we're most interested in, is that we're going to have a bit like what we had with lager, and that lots of people were going to tap rooms, taking their friends who weren't necessarily interested in craft beer and going, I just want a lager. And breweries started off just buying in lagers for those people and then started making their own, got excited about it, or decided if they're going to do it, they're going to do it right. And we started to see a real rise in lager consumption in craft beer. I think that's what's happening here. Lots of people are going to craft brewery spaces or craft beer pubs wanting a low alcohol option, and people going, well, if we're going to sell this, we're going to make it right. And that's what's starting to happen in the small breweries as well. And so we come to my favorite topic. When will it be year of the lager? And I think it's going to be 2025, folks.
But every year is year of the
Every
lager.
year to me is year of the
Yeah,
lager.
of course.
I don't know if you saw, I went semi-viral saying that Pilsner Urquell and Budvar are the pinnacle of human achievement.
But most people say, I don't like lager, and I just want to transport them, take them to like the Pilsner Urquell or the Budvar cellars, or to, say, like an Augustina pub in Munich, and just say, just drink that and tell me that isn't the pinnacle of human achievement.
And I stand by that. But pinnacle of human achievement in 2025, I think, will be the Hoppy Pilsner, which I predicted last year.
Yeah.
So I think I was a bit early calling it. I think
Again.
breweries, again. But what we've got here, so we've got the West Coast Pils, which is essentially, it's a really crispy American pale ale, flavour-wise at least. There's more complications to that. We've got a wet hot Pilsner here, which I've drunk quite a few of those
That's
in the last
Valhalla
year or
as
so.
well,
This
right?
is Valhalla.
That's exciting to think about.
I had a great one actually in Copenhagen as well, at Arbin Brewery. I'm very excited about this trend, and we're not going to drink that now, but I am going to drink this afterwards because it's Most, which means bridge. It's a Czech hop that's a combination of Jester, a crossbreeding of Jester and SARS.
Oh, wow.
It's a delicious hop.
Amazing.
So we're going to drink that after this.
Yeah, yeah.
We're actually going to drink Hudson Valley because we've only featured them once on the channel, and we weren't actually that kind about them.
West Coast Pills.
Ba-dum. Well, this one I think is probably going to land somewhere closer to an Italian Pilsner.
Okay, it's
You know,
quite
I'm,
light, isn't
I'm,
it?
I'm
Yeah.
just pulling the full can.
Oh, okay, go for it.
Because you need a big head on your beer,
We do.
on your lagers.
We do. He's even squeezed the can to
Oh,
get
I'm
all
gonna
the last
regret-
bit of juice.
Going to
out
regret
of
that for the B-roll though, aren't I? So, this is Sterling, which is kind of like American SARS. It's probably the closest comparison you can make. Bit more lemony, bit more citrusy. And Hallertau Blanc, which is a German crossbred modern hop, which combines sort of the Hallertau spicy hedgerow lemon hay with a little bit of kind of Sauvignon Blanc-y, white winey kind of acidity.
Lovely.
So I think it's going to be quite a special beer. And Hudson Valley, we didn't like the styles they brewed, but they made them exceptionally well.
They did.
So I'm expecting this to be good.
They did.
Oh, and it smells beautiful. Lemonade and hay.
Yeah, it's really soft.
Sounds like a picnic in a nice summer barn.
Oh. Like a Mills and Boone novel, Johnny. Roll in the hay.
Yeah, kind of.
Not me and you.
No, I mean that's what I was hoping you'd clarify. You're fresh grass rather than hay. Lovely lemonade-y kind of quality. Big bitterness.
Yep.
Big powdery dry hop kind of bitterness. I don't know whether they have dry hop this or whether it's just big in the boil. I'd suspect there's a dry hop there.
You're putting together these two amazing styles. Like the best qualities of two amazing styles. Does it slightly make it less good? Like, because you're taking both. The good things about both.
It's less than some of its parts.
Maybe for me personally, just the bitterness level with the lager kind of vibe, it takes a little bit of the crisp edge off, just a little bit. Just
Because
saying.
you come to lager for
Yeah.
pintability, right?
Yeah.
And these are less pintable. There's no doubt about
Yeah.
that. What they're trying to find is that middle ground between pintability and
Exactly.
big, bold aroma
I
experience. And I think, actually maybe now that I'm drinking more and more of it, this is really bitter. And I really like that because I love bitter
You love
beer.
bitter, yeah.
But I think a lot of people wouldn't. Maybe it's a little bit too far. And the perfect beers, the great West Coast Pils and stuff like that, are a little bit more restrained. It's a little bit more to the lager side, whereas this is, it's very Italian Pilsnery, which I know a lot of people find a bit too much,
Right.
but I love
kind
it.
of sophisticated for mine.
Is it? No, I don't think it's sophisticated. I think it's rawness. It's the opposite.
Possibly.
Yeah. people have been trying to say it's going to be year of the lager for a long time. And the thing that's been missing in everybody's brains is, but I love IPA.
Yes,
and at
certainly.
some point, that connection is going to be made and somebody's going to get that brand right. A bit like Birrificio Italiano already have with Italian Pilsner. There's another one coming with West Hop
It
Pils.
brings that component in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To just sell it, just to push it over the line for a lot of folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had our festival this year, London Beer.
Lumbitty.
And as part of that, we brewed a New Zealand IPA with the incredible Two Flints, who we tipped last year to have a great year, and they did. What I didn't realise when we brewed that New Zealand IPA is that everybody else that brewed a hoppy beer for that festival was going to use New Zealand hops. And indeed, basically the world has turned to New Zealand hops. Everywhere I went this year at breweries, they had samples from a farm, or maybe a farm conglomerate called Eggers from New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And everybody's using Nectaron, Nelson Sauvin. Motueka's having a big moment, which I've been banging the drum for years. I love that hop. It seems like New Zealand hops are being recognised and are getting people as excited as West Coast of America hops. And I think that this year is the year that drinkers are really going to notice. And I have seen some resistance from people who are like, I don't really like New Zealand hops.
They're different, aren't they?
They are.
That's the thing. They're quite different to what we're used to. Change is always scary, isn't it?
Change can be scary, and I think people underestimate how different these hops are, because New Zealand hops are harder to brew with. You get more raw character, same with Australian hops, more raw character, more greenness. But you can also, when you've got the right hop varieties, the right picks of those varieties, and you use them perhaps a little more sparingly or a little more different or at lower temperatures, you can get some pretty sensational stuff out.
Yeah. Like amps things up, doesn't it?
And creates a point of difference. And again, and they say late harvest Nelson Sauvin. What people expect is gooseberry, white wine kind of character. The reason we called the beer we did with Two Flints, we called it Pastil or Pastel. It's because I get green fruit pastels from Nelson Sauvin.
Yeah, you do, don't you? I could see people that drink a lot of wine coming over to this and embracing it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of aromas in that they recognise from Sauvignon Blanc. I think that also, because it's being used more sparingly, I think that you get less kind of rawness as a result. Like, this beer is super light and fresh and drinkable, even though it's a 5%.
Yeah.
It's a bright pale ale, so this is a new style I don't really think is a style. But essentially it's trying to be, aromatic and forward. A bit like West Coast Pilsner. It's like big hops, but it's not going to be kind of flabby like in New England.
No, it's definitely not flabby.
So I think the Nelson Sauvin is a really interesting hop. It plays really well with different hops. It can also be an incredible single hop beer. It can go into lagers, IPAs. I wouldn't necessarily use it in dark beers, but kind of any colour of lager or IPA, it can work really well in. It's quite a diverse hop in terms of the flavours it presents, but there's always that kind of green fruit pastel thing.
Yeah.
And a point of difference is really what IPA needs right now, because people fairly rightly say a lot of it tastes the same.
They all taste the same. They're all hazy, aren't they?
So we're also going to drink this delicious beer. So Verdant, they've been our friends for a decade. The whole decade they've existed. They've been our Patreon. They were our first ever Patreon. And they're celebrating 10 years with a bunch of collabs, including this double IPA with Green Cheek Beer, a brewery like top 10 for me that I'd love to visit. And this has actually two Antipodean hops. One of them, Rawaka, which is a really interesting. I'd be interested to get your take on sort of what Rawaka's presenting, but it's also got Nectaron.
Yes.
Nectarine is the kind of thing
Nectaron,
we're potentially going to get from that. And I think that, if Strata doesn't make it, it'll be Nectaron that
one or the other
knocks it off the post.
punches
Because
through,
it's quite a similar aroma. It's rich and full and citric and sticky.
Yeah. Yeah, baby.
And it's just, it's an 8.4% dipper, so it is sticky and sweet.
Punchy.
But this one has that kind of rawness that we expect from a New Zealand hop, that kind of cohubulone smack on the chin.
There's a fleshiness to that
And a fleshy-
fruit, isn't there? Like you say, the Nectaron kind of thing.
It's a really encompassing, slightly illicit kind of feel to this beer.
Yes,
that
naughty.
that shows the diversity that there is in New Zealand hops, which is, and then you have obviously Motueka, which we talked about a
Yeah.
lot on this channel, that is lemon and lime and fresh again. So there's a lot going on in New Zealand hop
So it's like
fields.
it's sort of a move away from the tropical stuff and to a different fruitiness, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think a deep, dark, Negroni-esque,
Yeah.
orangey deepness,
Yeah,
less
which-
top notes.
Which is, again, plays to your likes because you love bitterness.
Do love bitterness, yeah.
So
I mean,
it's kind of got that as
this is
well.
why, maybe it's partly prediction, partly plea. Let's get more more
Yeah,
New Zealand
yeah.
hops in beers.
No, I think they're great too. I love it, and they're so different from all of the stuff from America, all West stuff, that it's amazing to have this. It's like a new. It's like you're a painter, and you've got a color palette, right? And then suddenly someone invents a new color.
Yeah,
My God, isn't that exciting? You can paint in a totally different color.
yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And what it also does is it means that we're going to start to hopefully see more variation in different parts of the world again, because
Yeah.
people, everybody was using American hops, and that's starting to change as the UK catches up, Germany catches up. I think New Zealand had caught up and hadn't got the attention that it really deserved, apart from a couple of breweries. And so, now maybe we can go to New Zealand, go to the harvest and taste the wet hop beers, or just go to where I presume in New Zealand it's predominantly New Zealand hops that are used.
Yeah.
And that's very exciting. And in the UK, at least, we're starting to recognise New Zealand for the incredible hop growing region that it is. And I hope that continues to proliferate. And I expect it to, I should say. It's a prediction, not a plea. Prediction, not a plea. Prediction, not a plea. So my final prediction comes a bit off of last year's prediction that there'd be this civil war between
Yeah.
sensible and wacky. This, I think, is the trend that's kind of come out of those polite conversations that were had. And this is the idea that, I guess, craft beer, small batch beer, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have to be geeky, complicated, hyped. Sometimes you can just drink an independent, ethical beer that's delicious on a boat.
It's just a beer.
Or you can have,
Yeah.
the enemy of cask in the 60s, which was smooth flow.
Or you can have, a beer that just says relax. It's just a hazy IPA.
Yeah. So hazy IPA has gone from the hype style
Yeah.
to it's just a hazy
demystified.
IPA. Yeah, completely.
You don't need to put this on a pedestal. It's just a hazy IPA.
Yeah. It's just normalizing it.
Normalising, yeah.
And I think that's what the movement is kind of normalization or simplicity. It's trying to say, we've talked a lot about craft beer. We've talked a lot about ethics and
Yeah,
morals
yeah.
and independence. Maybe just buy your local beer and enjoy it with your salty crew. It's for drinking, not thinking,
Exactly.
as they would say.
Exactly.
And, we're seeing this all over. We're also seeing, kind of coupled with that, a kind of nostalgia. Like I said, in the 60s and 70s, smooth flow was killing cask. It
Yeah.
was big breweries trying to find a way to make cask more sustainable and easy to look after. And it started killing cask lines. But now we're like, hey, smooth bitter.
Pretty good, pretty
Wow,
fun.
Let's give it a go. And this
yeah.
kind of this is normcore in a can.
Yes.
And it's kind of important to point out, I think, that at no point is this, like, the craft beer space accepting that there's too much flavour or too much intention behind craft beer. It's just saying that we don't have to talk and think about that. Because this beer, I mean, if you smell this, it smells like a Munich Helles. So much honey.
I mean, that's a great session, Crispy Boy.
Yeah, this is a silver award winner at the Great American Beer Festival.
Believe it.
And so I think this is a really important segment of craft beer. If craft beer wants to fight back against the
Yeah.
encroachment by big beer,
Yeah.
being able to offer this kind of thing is super important.
And I love this mentality as well because it speaks to the everyman, right? It's going, you don't have to be in this exclusive little club or this little bubble, this little niche or niche, if you're American. It's like, this is for everyone. You like boats, you can drink this on your boat.
Yep.
You have showers at least a few times a week. You can have a shower beer. We are demystifying, but still celebrating the joy of just having a good beer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of confidence there, right?
Yeah, it can take confidence as well to do that.
There's a confidence in going, it's just, something you drink on your boat. It's good beer.
Yeah.
Not shouting from the hilltops.
Yep.
Just going, this is for you.
Yeah. And I think that is the way that beer in more straightened times, more competitive times, has gone.
I 100% agree. And I think it speaks a lot about the world we're living in right now. And just having a little security blanket of trusty beer.
Yeah.
Beer will make everything slightly better. Is what you need, right?
Yeah, it will. Alcohol in moderation will make things a little bit better in the short term. To a better year,
To a better year.
2025.